Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who get us going for over 450 episodes.
Yeah, if you want to become a patron, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Danny Himura. Thank you, Danny. I think we're like 466, 465.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's just insane. Holiday season coming up for those of you in the States. Thanksgiving this week. You're gonna be traveling. Hopefully we'll keep your ears lubed.
Exactly. Primed and lubed. So now the thing is like there's always something to complain about in the game industry. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I want to talk about something positive because we've done like Thanksgiving stuff before.
Yeah,
Whatever.
we usually do. This is usually our Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was like I was having a tough time. Like, oh, what's there to be thankful? I don't know, whatever. Um, but like,
Nothing.
there's been some stuff that's kind of happening, and I think there's actually good on the back end. It's like, yeah, the industry is kind of like slowly driving itself. Now, there's one aspect where I think the game industry as a whole, we're in this rut. We're in a pit we created for ourselves because we are the ones who demanded so much more from our games, so that now they take half a decade to make. Now they take a few hundred people a half a decade to make them in $100 million, so or more. So it's like we can't have fun small games anymore. We can't have our 3D platformers all the time, and just our really interesting oddball ideas, unless outside of the indie space, because we drove this industry to a cliff for in our arms race. But
I mean,
that's
all industries are pendulums, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, we're at the farthest extent of one side now. Things are going to start swinging back toward the middle, and then we'll hit that other side too, where no one's making big ass huge games, and you know we'll have to swing back towards the middle again.
well, there's an interesting thing here, though, that's not really related to that, in a sense, where it's interesting how a few companies I've noticed this happening are having what I've called the come to Jesus moment, which is they've kind of realized the fool's gold that was the mobile market and the live service market. And I
Mm.
say this because it's actually been a number of major companies, a lot of them in Japan, who are basically deciding. A lot of this is spurred on from the success of Korea and China, that they had Liza P, Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade. Actually, a lot of them is inspired by that because those sold really, really well. But now they're like, oh wait, what? Like the big market, big AAA console market space. So they're kind of like again, they're chasing a trend. They're not doing it. I guess they're not really doing it because they're having a sudden realization. It's more just kind of like, again, they're just kind of following other popular games that are selling really well. But that's okay though. I think I'm okay with that because at some point it was going to have to come to a head where live service games are not sustainable. Mobile gaming is not sustainable because mobile, at the end of the day, is more or less live service on a smaller package.
It's so interesting because if you would just ask me, I think it's probably a pretty commonly held belief is that mobile gaming is big money. Um,
I mean, I think it's big money for some people.
Well, yeah, you were saying before, and we looked it up. Stuff really, and we've mentioned this previously. I think Matt Piscatella has been riding this train for a while, pointing it out. There's like 10 games that everybody's playing, if even
Mhm.
everybody's playing, and they're dominating. And so mobile is actually dominated also by like Fortnite and Candy Crush, and basically no one else is making money on mobile. Call of Duty is on mobile too. I don't know if it's making money.
It makes money. Like Genshin's a big one.
Genshin does well.
Any of that Hoyoverse stuff does well on mobile.
But it's
But
like Square isn't making any money on mobile.
yeah,
Capcom's not making any money on mobile. Uh, I don't know why that's such a shock to me. I've never read the numbers like that and like gone into the numbers on mobile gaming and
I mean, here's
like
the thing. You want to know? Here's my frank, honest opinion on it. Is that all of these companies, because companies are run by people who don't actually have a pulse on what the the players, the people playing these games actually want or are interested in. They just see numbers go up somewhere, so they have to like we need to pivot there because their whole mentality, you go back 15 years ago, the whole mentality of the mobile boom in general was just like, oh my god, there's so much money here where we can't be missing out on this. We have to be in this. How are we not in this space? Like there's so much money
right,
here. But the thing is like no one ever took the time to figure out how and why and what works in the mobile space, which is when you look at something like Genshin or Candy Crush, right? Or any of the other like really big mobile success stories, most of the time they didn't come from developers who spent decades making console gaming experiences. So when Capcom sits there and tries to suddenly make mobile games, they had multiple mobile endeavors that went nowhere. It the most success Capcom ever had in the mobile space was licensing to someone else who knows what they're doing, is more of a mobile focused developer, and just
right.
their license. I mean, they are launching. There's like another Monster Hunter mobile title coming. They've had multiple ones. They even had one from Niantic. But I mean, it's just an example of them. They're having better luck licensing their property out than trying to make mobile games themselves.
Companies hate licensing out their product when they think they can make all of the money.
Right.
And I don't understand it. It's the same reason why every company built a streaming platform rather than just continue to license to
Mhm.
Netflix. You know, it's like they were like, no, no, we're leaving money on the table. Are you though? Did you think this through?
No, and that's the thing is they didn't. And one of the big things that spurred me on was recently, within like the last week or so, Koei Tecmo announced they're going to double their employee count. They're going to go from 2,500 to 5,000 employees. And they
Wow.
said, and specifically for the reason they want to make AAA console and PC games. And they said they're leaving the mobile market behind. They say the mobile market's basically peaked. We're not going to, and
Damn.
which is interesting that they're just coming outright saying it. And the thing is, I think they're honestly right. I think whoever, looked at that, I'm sure there was a lot of money spent doing data, analysis of stuff, but I could have told you that anyways. It's not like, and the thing is, I'm not saying the mobile market's going anywhere. I'm not saying that like nobody plays games on phones anymore. Of course they do,
Right.
but it's like a grander scale version of the battle royale on right now, which is you don't release a battle royale right now unless you absolutely want to fail miserably.
Right.
Because you've got your battle royales already. You have Fortnite, which is the big daddy. You have Call of Duty, which still sucks up a lot of money. You have PUBG still back in the background there. You still have Apex Legends. You still have these big games, big games.
Right.
And if they're not into BRs, they're playing something else like Rocket League. They're playing Overwatch, or any of the other big MOBAs. You're not going to have it. The only time you're going to find success doing something like this is if you come in you just have to be at the right place at the right time. Where people are hungry, they've bounced off of one thing and are hungry for the next, and they sort of just find it.
And you have to come with an idea that is, I hate saying this so much, fresh but familiar. It's like
Right.
it's the most executive ass thing to say because whenever someone doesn't know what to say, they say, "Well, I want it to be fresh but familiar." But in reality of this is like from a shooter's perspective, you want something that doesn't completely wackily change the overall promise of the shooting genre, but you do want something that does its own thing.
I think it's basically saying the concept needs to be something that can be grasped easily.
Yeah, I don't have to sit there and do a 2-hour tutorial. I know what it is because I've played a lot of shooters, so it's
Yeah.
still familiar. But now it's a new take on that. Actually, something that I sort of I liked about like Gray Zone Warfare when we were playing through it is it had that idea where it was like, yeah, it could be a battle royale, which is what it was going to turn into. It was just going to be not exactly a battle royale, but people murking each other in this
Mhm.
live environment. Um, but it did have its own sort of fresh take of like dropping in, and you're not specifically going after human players, but they are deadly and around. I That was fresh enough. There were other problems with that game, but the idea, the core concept behind it, still pretty strong. You know, I don't know necessarily how it's early access, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah, I mean they're doing a lot of things. Now they're doing nighttime missions and
Now they're
stuff
doing
like that,
nighttime and they have weather and they have
and a
yeah,
lot of expanded a lot on guns. They've also done a lot of balancing too,
yeah.
AI tweaking and balancing as well to sort of you know, try to speed up the process a little bit for people as well. Like when
So it still
where.
holds promise is what I'm getting at. Is like it still has promise to like deliver something fresh but familiar enough.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll see. Um, but that concept of fresh but familiar is something that is it's oddly hard to deliver on. Like look
Mhm.
at what happened to Concord.
Right.
You know,
Which wasn't really fresh, honestly,
no,
at
it
all.
wasn't. Well, when it first started, maybe it was when it was first started development. Maybe it was fresh. Maybe, but there was nothing about it that seemed fresh. Like it just seemed like a retread or a I don't know, like like it was chasing Overwatch in a way that like they didn't want you to know it was different from Overwatch. Like when you watched it, if it didn't say Concord at the end, you could have thought this is Overwatch. Like, and that's a problem.
Nah, because there wasn't anyone near hot enough to goon over, so
Yeah, that's fair.
which frankly,
No Concord porn.
yeah, then they know Concord 34, sorry.
That's
Uh,
too bad. That lizard skin dude. Come on.
the thing is that, like, people can I mean, I kind of am a little bit of a down player of that stuff where I'm like because I've said sex doesn't sell, but like I have to but I've had to reiterate and clarify sex doesn't sell at $60 or $70. You can't sell a Gooner game. You're not going to sell Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball for $60, especially in today's day and age. You make that game free to play and you put an RNG or a gotcha system behind it. Oh yes. Oh yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, sex sells cheeseburgers. Sex sells anything.
It advertises. Is
That's
what I
yeah,
would say. So it doesn't sell, it advertises.
fair enough.
It gets eyes on your product, and a lot of people like people. Something like a lot of people actually like Overwatch for its gameplay. God bless their souls. Um, so you get your eyes on it because you can't escape all the just sort of like thirsting that goes around for Overwatch characters. And then you hear about, oh, the game's actually really fun. Well, oh, does it cost much? No, or whatever. Actually, I don't know what I think Overwatch is free to play now
Is
or
it free to
something.
play now?
I
No.
think I don't know I don't know what its price model is now, um
Hmm.
but yeah, like
Haven't played it in
yeah,
years, and
played it.
hasn't played.
I haven't played it since 2016. So
I didn't even realize it was that old. You know what that does to me? What it does to my ego to know that time has flown that fast? It hurts. It hurts bad. Um, I I'm wondering.
yeah, it's free to play. It's free to play. I
Oh,
just
it's free
looked
to
it up.
play now. Wow,
Yeah, I looked it up on Steam. Overwhelming, mostly negative reviews by people.
damn.
Uh
The thing is yeah, that's funny. I never really like it when a game is getting absolutely annihilated in reviews. Even when I agree with the negative of reviews, I feel bad knowing how many years went into something.
we
Like,
didn't talk about this. I teased this, and this is kind of an aside here. But in Jason Schreier's book, about Blizzard, I couldn't believe this, and I know a lot of people were shocked too. There was a moment, this was back in like 2016 when Overwatch was blowing up, and I can't remember if it was Jeff, whoever was the head of Overwatch, the director at the time. Um, Bobby Kotick was like, "Well, let's get a single player game going," and I think it was. I don't know. I don't want to misquote whoever was in charge of Overwatch at the time. Safely, we'll just say it safely like that. Told him he didn't want to do that. They didn't have the manpower. So Bobby Kotick was like, "Well, let's hire a bunch of people then to make a campaign, or let's have one of the other dev studios make a campaign for you." And he fought back and said, "No, no, 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 no. I want to keep it close to our knit. I want, we work best as a close knit family." Pulled that, we work best as a close knit family. And then, of course, Bobby was actually trying to say, like, this is blowing up. This is more than your team can handle. But he also pulled the whole, this was part of the deal in the Blizzard Activision Blizzard merger, was that
Mhm.
you wouldn't have absolute say over what Blizzard does. So I'm pulling the veto card on you and saying, like, we're gonna keep the team below a certain threshold, and we're gonna work on, we'll do this stuff ourselves. And of course, we all saw how that went. It all was a disaster. Overwatch 2 was a disaster. The free, like, the whole campaign and the single player stuff got, like, axed or morphed or downscaled heavily. Bobby was right. Bobby was actually right, which is so crazy to think about.
Well, I hate to say this, and I hate to say anything nice about Bobby Kotick, but man got to where he was. Like nobody handed him that job. Okay, he was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
wildly successful businessman who cut lots and lots of throats. So when it came to cutting throats, probably should listen to
I
him.
mean, don't get me wrong. He is an absolutely, like, piece of
Yeah,
shit human being, but
not a great
it,
man
it,
by all
it's
accounts. But
it's kind of crazy to sit there and think, like, okay, well, like, here's the thing: you have a successful new IP. Let's explain, and you've promised that, you've teased that we're going to do this. Well, like, let's do it. Well, I don't have enough manpower. Well, then let's hire some people. No, I don't want to hire people.
yeah, it's wild to see him on the right side of history, but at the same time, like, yeah, it makes sense that he would know. He would make some right
Right,
calls.
because his whole thing was just like, this is what I did. I did this for COD. I did this for Guitar Hero. Every time, once those games started blowing up, I immediately hired more people to make more of them. So
Yeah, that's I haven't gotten around to reading that book, but I imagine there's a zillion stories like that inside there.
yeah, so
Just shockingly bad decisions, and the person you'd least expect to be right is the person fighting for the right
it,
thing.
it's just a weird thing. But yeah, that's a bit of a suffering from success there, in a way. But either way, though, the point is that Concord suffered the fate many other games of many genres are facing, and that is, Overwatch exists. Why do we need another one? And there's no good answer. There is no good answer. I mean, other than, like, well, people hate Overwatch now. It's mostly negative. Sure, there's plenty of other things like Overwatch for people to bounce to. Sadly, the Paladins devs has hit hard times as well, and they've had to basically, like, cancel down, scrunch down on a bunch of their stuff as well, I believe. But I mean, I don't know. I think we got to this point where I don't think the market for 5v5, I think it's tapped. Like, the people, the market for 5v5 or hero shooters, they have a hero shooter. They're playing whatever they're going to play right now. There's not some there's not some millions, there's not some 5 million strong player base waiting in the wings, not playing these games, waiting for the next big thing. It's not happening.
Yeah, that's what I would say is like everyone who wants to play a hero shooter has found their hero shooter and is playing it. It's the
Yeah.
same way that with battle royale and everything. I do think an interesting thing about you know mobile gaming in general is like there is. I don't like mobile games, like the way mobile games are built, but
Oh,
I
I
do like the
absolutely.
idea of being able to play games wherever I am, and it's one of those reasons why I'm so jazzed that portables are coming. Like we know that they're coming. Nintendo's going to have like a major jump, but the one thing that I hope, if Microsoft and Sony do actually pull the trigger on it, is one of them focuses on, not lap based mobile gaming, but pocket based mobile gaming.
Pocket based. Right.
Something
Okay.
like a Vita
Well, Sony's definitely not doing that.
No,
Um,
they're gonna go to a tabletop slash sitting in your lap slash.
right, because this is like what I'm showing on screen for those listening is a ROG Ally X, and Andrew can see it.
Yeah,
It is the most powerful portable gaming machine on the market right now, but it's kind of like it's a thick switch.
yeah, you got to put it in your
Size-wise.
backpack.
You got to put it in your backpack. You're not putting this in your pocket. It doesn't go in a pocket. It's a really cool device, but it doesn't go in a pocket. Um, and I think it's going to be interesting because eventually we're going to get to that point because I think there's a reason why Sony even is heavily rumored now to be making a portable PS5. And by the way, if you want a powerful console, if you want a powerful machine that's Vita sized, you really should look into the Odin Minis. Like they look like Vitas. And
They're cool looking. I think you sent me a link to that the last time I whined
yeah,
about.
because I have a Pro which is like more full size. It's like a smaller Switch, but I mean like they make Vita size ones. They're new onto the market. But anyways, um, I think Sony's doing this portable PS5, and Microsoft has outright stated publicly, yes, we are looking into making a portable machine. So Microsoft's like a forthcoming. Sony's a big rumor. Nintendo's already there. And why do I think that's happening? Well, Nintendo did it because Nintendo needed to have something to differentiate itself. Nintendo couldn't jump back into the arms race against Sony and Microsoft. They just don't have the money. And even then, it would still be this thing where it's like, what is Nintendo going to offer besides Nintendo games in an arms race?
Right.
Like the hypothetical. I wish Nintendo would just go back to making consoles. And I'm like, are you going to leave your PlayStation or your Steam ecosystem for a Nintendo home console? No, you're not. You're not, and you're not. Because if you care about Nintendo games at all, you'll just buy a Switch because if you think those games are really good, you'll play them on the Switch anyways, like all of us did.
Right.
So, but time is marching on. And we're getting to this point now where and PS5 Pro is a big one for me. Graphics are diminishing greatly.
Well, graphical leaps. Yeah, I mean, graphics have never been better, but the
No,
leaps that
right.
they're making.
The
Yeah.
the leaps are just diminishing
Right.
greatly. And at this point now, like, where do you go? There's only so much you can do because, and I'm not saying graphics can't get better. I'm saying if you want graphics to get better than where they're at now, you're looking, okay, well, let's spend 10 years with 1,000 people costing $1 billion to make a video game. In other words, Grand Theft Auto 6, every game will have the release schedule of a Rockstar game now. That is not sustainable.
It's just crazy because someone's doing it.
Yeah,
You know,
Rockstar.
well, yeah, but like what I mean is like someone is thinking for the world that's going to be like that. I don't think Rockstar plans these things. I think this is just what's happening for Rockstar. But I think there is somebody out there that's thinking along those lines. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna get ahead of it. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna
Yeah.
build the first 10-year long game. Like someone's got to be thinking about it, and they're insane.
Yeah.
Um, I do think one of the going back to the pocket version size of a ROG Ally type thing. Uh, I know I can hear people already being like, "Well, that would cost as much as an iPhone." Exactly, and the iPhone is the argument that people would be willing to spend that on something pocket sized. Now, do I think it needs to be that powerful? No, but
You gotta
it'd be
have to
kind of
sit
cool.
there and wonder though, because remember Sony did try once upon a time to make a portable gaming phone. It, wa-
Yeah,
it was like
what
a
was that?
slide up. I forget what it was called. It had like it slid up and it would look like a PSP Go basically.
Yeah,
But it was a phone with buttons and a D pad and everything, and it was Sony's very feeble attempt to make a gaming phone.
right.
The thing is though, I feel like if you were to take the design of more modern phones, like go back to the original vertical style, like here's a phone I'm showing on screen that actually has buttons on it.
My God.
But if you had D pads and a buttons and whatever, and maybe some things on the back, for shoulder buttons, even there might be a market there somewhere. Maybe for like you say, like
Well,
having a pocket sized portable that could maybe potentially make phone calls.
think about how thin a modern phone that's powerful is, and then think about how people used to carry the sidekick around. that thick
Yeah.
brick, and it
Thank you. It was
literally
awesome. I will hear no slander.
it was awesome. It was really cool, and you just like you could kick it out, and it had all sorts of buttons. You could easily have, you know, a gaming system
Mhm.
that size with modern phone technology in it, and it would probably
I
play
mean,
some
I
pretty
I
beefy
think
games.
it's so funny how there's so many things like to be more recent. You've seen the This Is an Xbox campaign,
Yeah,
and every time they show someone with, they have like a ye old standard, 360 style controller with this with this just this clunky thing, and the phone is just sitting in this cradle on top, like right
yeah.
above the controller, and they're like, "This is an Xbox." Reportedly, I'm like, who carries around a freaking PlayStation or 360 controller with them?
Somebody does. Somebody does. Do you remember
So weird to me.
there was a brief period in time, and I'm sure many people remember this. There was a brief period of time where you would, like, if you carried a backpack or something, like when I was skating, every skater I knew had a backpack, like a JanSport if you were real. And in it, they were like some people carried actual full Game Cubes, but like they would carry a controller for whatever was the the most
I got a
popular system.
GameCube.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Um,
Oh.
but
Didn't those guys go on to be like actual major comedians in Hollywood
yeah,
or something?
one of them is one of the biggest entertainers uh alive today. I don't know why I'm blanking on his stage name's Childish Gambino. I don't know why
No,
I'm
Donald Glover?
Donald Glover. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he was one of those guys. He
Wait,
is he is the content warning bro rapist.
but I
Like
got a
where
GameCube.
he's,
So
there's like
I
12 dildos in here. Yeah, those are for you.
okay, so
That's
for I
him.
guess the thing is we might actually have been so many years now past this point. There was a video a long, long time ago. Donald Glover was in it. It was a parody of To Catch a Predator, the Chris Hansen show.
Yeah.
And basically people it was like, the catch predator, these guys, they would catch guys going over to hang out with their bro, and they'd have a backpack, like a skater JanSport backpack, and inside, like, I got a GameCube. It was always this joke that they're coming over with a GameCube. They got a GameCube in Smash Brothers, and like,
Dildos.
in a giant, like, foot long or 2 foot or 3 foot long dildo inside.
And what was the music they listened to? John, was it I can't remember the name of the song. Like it's like I got the new CD. You want to listen to it? Yeah, we were just listening to this new CD, and then all of a sudden he was just holding me down. No, bro. Uh it's not funny. That's not funny anymore. But um yeah, there were dudes that rolled around with Game Cubes in their backpack, and there was definitely like we know at least Bojack, you're listening. You definitely did this. He had all of his controllers in the trunk of his car just in case he went over to a friend's house and they're all like, "Oh, we're gonna play 360 game." I got a 360 controller in the trunk of my car. Like he had every console back there. It was like he went to someone for pimping his ride, and all they
It's
did
like
was
Fear and Loathing. He opens the trunk and there's just all these consoles, like, tied down in a suitcase or whatever, all immaculately organized and spread. World of
very much
uppers and downers and
very much that. So yeah, I could totally see someone carrying around an Xbox controller to play their phone. Do Xbox controllers have Bluetooth connection? Is that what they
yeah.
were doing?
hmm
Not OG 360 controllers though.
I don't not three no not 360. The series ones definitely do, and
Huh,
the Xbox One versions probably do.
I imagine. Um, one other thing that this sort of brings up, or another thing that this brings up with just sort of how that pendulum is swinging, how like companies are coming to Jesus on mobile gaming, is companies, not all of them, but like Capcom, for instance, and Square and Namco and stuff. They very much are behind the ball because I feel like we've been talking about.
Actually, I argue this: Capcom is ahead of the game, and I feel like Capcom's benefiting the most because they had their. I think Capcom had their come to Jesus moment in 2017.
Oh, right, because they've been licensing. Yeah, you were saying that they were
Yeah,
licensing
they
things
were like
forever.
Teppen and stuff like that, and
Yeah,
Monster
yeah,
Hunter and all.
yeah.
But they had their come to Jesus moment pretty much with the start of RE7. The RE engine and RE7 was kind of Capcom's come to Jesus moment. And the dark
And
days of Capcom kind of got left behind because they realized, all right, let's just focus on what we're good at, which is Resident Evils, and then they made a
Monster
big
Hunter.
Monster Hunter and a big brand new Devil May Cry, um, and remakes of games people wanted remakes of, and they've had their little small projects in between them, but they had their come to Jesus moment where like they basically, all right, we're not trying to make what was like COG Capcom Online Gaming, or Capcom Mobile Gaming. They just dropped all these weird like endeavors from this company and just said, all right, let's just focus on what we're good at, and it actually paid off for them.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to happen to these other companies as well. Like Sega's kind of had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment, kind of where they're just like, okay, well, let's just focus what we're good at. We make Yakuza games, Atlas makes RPGs, and we make Sonic games. I'm hoping their initiative for all to reboot all their old franchises pulls through for them, assuming those reboots are really good.
Well, Sega's had an incredible year, as we talked about on a side
Yeah,
quest. If you're a patron, you know what we're talking about. Um, but we didn't really go in depth on it, but they've had like a banner year. They've had an
yeah,
incredible year. So it sounds like it's working out for them.
yeah. So I think it's working out for them. So this is
Will
where
they
it all
keep it up?
comes. Yeah, this is where it all comes back because Square's kind of in a pickle because they had their new CEO because their old CEO refused to let NFTs go, so he basically had to get basically shareholder forcibly removed, and they replaced him with a young guy who's basically said, all right, let's like hyper focus on big AAA stuff, which is kind of unfortunate because I actually do feel some of their smaller stuff was actually pretty good. They just had the absolute dumbest release schedule. Put everything out at once, it'll be fine. Okay.
Mm.
But yeah, so Square's kind of doing that because Square has also gotten Square, unfortunately, I say this, unfortunately, had some early success in the mobile section. But it kind of burned them because they had early successes and early failures, and then it eventually just became nothing but failures. And I mean, they did announce, Final Fantasy 14 is going to get a mobile version. Cool, whatever. But that's already taking a player base that already exists, and then maybe they're going to get some looky loos, in the mobile sector to like jump in on what is already a big community. But yeah, like in general, Square used to have a insane mobile push, and they've kind of dropped it, especially with the new CEO, because
It isn't going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere. And the thing is that you can't recoup nothing really from a bad mobile game. In fact, the game just basically doesn't exist after you shut it down. So you basically might as well have thrown your money into a hole.
And they're like all mobile games really are sort of the same shtick for the most part.
They're all live service. The weird thing about the mobile market is that it basically established itself as like games need to be either insanely cheap, like we're talking like a couple bucks cheap, or they need to be free to play with RNG gotcha mechanics. And that's how you make money off mobile. So the problem with that is that, man, if that game doesn't take off, if you don't hook a bunch of whales, every
I
every amount of effort and money you put into it's basically gone.
Will there ever be a day where someone makes a really good single player mobile game? Like because the reason that
Where
they did
there's
those
definitely going to be arguments that those exist, but
well, what I mean though is like the reason that mobile games are designed the way they are is because most mobile games are only played for a few minutes at a time or while you're pooping.
I mean, arguably speaking, Candy Crush is that game.
Right. But is there ever going to be a mobile game where someone's all like, I'm going to play this for the next 3 hours because it's a really good single
Mm.
player game? Is that around? Is there something that is
There's definitely been attempts to make a more in-depth engaging thing, but the funny thing is like I talked about how Capcom already had their come to Jesus. Remember, they put Resident Evil 7 and 4 and 8 on mobile on the
Oh, right. Yeah,
iPhone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they
On the
and
15, yeah, yeah, Resident Evil 4 is on there.
yeah, they sold in the thousands. They sold like 1,000 copies.
Ooh.
Not even.
I wonder how it ran on the 15.
Well, here's the thing: they were charging full price for it.
Okay. It's because I can't imagine it's going to be the same experience.
No, no way. But I mean, oh, but you could get RE4 remake and 7 and 8 to run on mobile, and your market is about 1,000 people.
Well, see, but the thing is if it was a mobile sized handheld that had like interface, like real buttons and stuff,
Right, right.
that would be super fucking cool.
But you could attach a controller to it.
That is true, and also something I will never do. I'm just being honest. I'll never do it.
I mean, if anything, though, I mean, again, I don't think. I mean, Capcom probably definitely lost some money, but I'm sure there was also like incentive or kickback from Apple, to put it on there to have like,
Absolutely. Yes.
hey, we're gonna kick you some money because that's what they did for VR. Here's some money so you can showcase how cool this is on our exclusive product. Hopefully they didn't learn too much, but if anything, that was probably more just. And these are old ports of games that have already come out and made their money back. So it's probably not a huge wash for them, but it's like it's if anything, it's more confirmation there. The mobile market is is fool's gold at this point.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a single developer who accidentally creates, the next Flappy Bird, cool. If you're gonna dump tens of millions of dollars into a mobile project, oh boy, yep, oh boy, I have a fireplace. It's a really good spot for your money, or you can just give it to me because you'll get about the same amount of return. So,
Well, my favorite thing is we've talked about how like it's a fool's gold. We used Apple as an example. Apple's also a perfect example of the fool's gold that is VR slash AR helmets and
mm,
shit in that space. Although the Apple Eye, whatever the Apple Vision or whatever, is supposed to be amazing, but almost everybody has stopped using it about 2 weeks after they got it, and it's 3,000 or 4,000 or whatever the hell thousands of dollars.
yeah, you're right. I barely remember hearing about this, but yeah. Well, I mean, the king of closed gardens wants to sell you an exclusive headset. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Oh, supposed to be just incredible. It sits on a shelf. Um, VR, I think, is gonna have. There's gonna be a moment where they're all like, it's not worth investing in VR anymore. Um, unless you get like a world where, and I don't know, I would dig this. I don't think anyone else would dig this. But once you get one of the world where like, oh, you have those movement haptic feedback treadmill, what I'm talking about,
Yeah, there
like
was
where you
that
can,
Disney Imagineer who created that floor that you can walk on that doesn't move, or like it's like a weird like
yeah, it
tread thing.
slides and yeah, that's cool as hell. When that becomes accessible to have in your home, VR will take off. When that sort of thing, because the the whole point of VR creating a whole world where you can look around stuff, uh, sort of gets screwed by most modern game design,
Hmm.
principles. There's just like we could go into a whole episode about the problems with VR from the ground up.
Yeah, well, I
But
mean, it's always been just like ease of use and accessibility.
right, when that becomes less of a barrier, VR will take off. But right now, there's too many barriers to VR taking off. And it's all stuff that companies sort of can't control because the market just isn't willing to go there yet. I don't know. There was that game. What was it? It was a PlayStation, not a stat. What was their event? PlayStation Experience.
PlayStation experience, yeah.
You remember, and you had like the cool rifle,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, 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 yeah. Fire
that game.
Sprite or something. I forget what the game was called.
Yeah, that game was pretty cool. And moving your character with a thumbstick on the rifle was fairly cool. I'm shocked that that didn't take off quite as much, but also that game was sort of basic, like overall. Cool idea though. But the day that I can like be a colonial marine walking on this treadmill thing and me and you are hunting bugs,
Hmm.
well then yeah, I'm going to get a VR system for that. I don't know what it'll cost, but I'll fucking get it. Like that'll be cool. Or the idea of like a treadmill like that where you can go trail running in your apartment. Very cool. Real cool idea. Imagine all like the weird fitness apps that would be. God, and if VR headsets got smaller.
Yeah, smaller. Again, it's just this shit's got to be like way easier to put on and take off and
Yeah,
start
the
up.
tech
And
the tech isn't there yet. I wonder when they're gonna have that moment though, because things are gonna swing again back the other way where there will be no VR. The same way that 3D movies are slowly, or not even slowly, most 3D movies are just gone now.
yeah.
Um, you know, I think that that's gonna happen. I don't know if mobile and live services will never go anywhere.
Well,
It's gonna be here
again,
forever.
yeah, and I kind of want to iterate. I'm like, mobile and live service are not going away, but I think you're just going to see so much less focus on them
Major companies won't be involved in them.
because why you can't do it anymore. It's now finally they're seeing the light, and that is the risk of okay, like again, if you spend all this money into an online thing that needs to be constantly monitored and updated and worked on, and it doesn't take off, it's like, what is the shelf life of a massive flop? 11 days, according to Concord. So
That'll never not be funny, but also tragic.
so I,
Like, I genuinely my heart bleeds for the people who worked on it.
I mean, this it's really impressive. It's still really impressive months later because I got numbers. I actually heard like a down to the unit number, and it's like nobody cared. Like that is an impressive amount of apathy for a title. Like the amount of units that actually sold was just like holy
Hundreds.
holy shit. No, it was more than hundreds, but like um for a Sony first party title it was like, oh my god, wow.
How much did it end up costing in the end? Like
Well,
200 something million?
this is a debate, but it basically, depending on how you look at it, how you want to read the situation, it's anywhere in the 200s or 400. 400 for like everything. 400 is like the loss of like, buying, purchasing, buying, building, doing everything that's not associated with the actual game development itself. Now, a lot of, and you could easily argue, well, that is part of the game development was like buying the studio, buying it, buying the IP, building up, building the office, or, they probably didn't build the building, but renting the building, setting up the team, expanding the team, all that jazz. And the reason I don't particularly say, well, that's not really part of the game's production, because Sony made the decision to kill the team, kill the studio, and lay off all the workers. They could have kept them on. They could have kept them going, and that wouldn't. And you could say, okay, well, it's a $200 million loss, but they'll just keep them around. They'll move on to the next thing because hey, they're a bunch of industry veterans. They're totally good for another game.
Well, that
And
and the shooting mechanics, like the actual gameplay was apparently quite good.
yeah, and yeah, and the other thing too is that no matter who you are, if you start a new studio, it's going to cost money.
Mhm.
Like you cannot say every time a brand new studio is established that the budget of their first that is part of the budget of their first game. Not necessarily. It's like saying, the an internal engine, right? Oh, we made this internal like Crystal Tools. That's part of the budget of Final Fantasy 15. And it's like or Luminous engine for it turned into Luminous. Like Luminous creating Luminous engine was also the budget of 15. No, it's not. They created Luminous engine to be on multi games, and it was on a couple different games. But yeah, like you know what I mean. Like it's not.
Yeah, I wonder from an accounting perspective if they like is an engine considered an asset? Like, do they list it as an asset so that they
It's
split the cost of development between several
Yeah,
different
look
games?
at it. It's R&D. It's like it's something you have to it's something you have to knowingly as a company spend money to make, knowing that it's not a product that's going to sell and like earn revenue.
Right.
It's a part of your company. It's a company expense, is what it is. It's not
Hmm.
but it's not a production budget of a title to sell. But anyways, yeah, that's a lot of money. just a ton of money lost for Sony. And then they basically more or less decided it was going to be a $400 million write down, because within a month they shut down the whole studio and laid everyone off. So basically, yeah, it was a complete wash for them, because they didn't even try to salvage it. They could have. They had Sony absolutely, as whatever troubles Sony has, they absolutely had the means to keep them around and put them on a new project, but they didn't.
Well, well, Sony, the parent company, maybe not, but PlayStation definitely. PlayStation is doing well.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing: it's like, okay, everyone's susceptible to failure. Honestly,
Yeah.
everyone is. What if the next Naughty Dog game doesn't hit and you just spent $250 million on that?
But
You already had to cancel Last of Us Faction, so it's like,
it does actually, I have thought of that where I'm sort of curious because Naughty Dog is sort of their darling right now.
sure, like, but it's like their next game could, like, there's
But if their
you,
next game Concords, like,
yeah, their next game Concords and then Firewalk. What if their next game would have been a success?
yeah.
Now you don't have that. Now you just have two failures. It's a gamble, but now you've actually made it worse for yourself by having absolutely nothing, by getting rid of what was a game studio in your stable now doesn't exist. So now there's no potential for a hit to come out of there, because it's gone. So
Yeah, it's
that's
sort
that's
of,
why that's why I think the whole shutting down studios things is a really, boy, is that short term. That's only, short term invest. Make the short term look good, make the investors happy. Fuck them, because how are you going to have success if you don't actually literally have anyone making product?
well, this is similar to like Microsoft shut down a bunch of studios after they bought them. It's like who did they bought someone and then they shut them down within 6 months or something like that? Who was that? That was oh no, I guess it wasn't after like 6 months, but they bought a studio. They made that one game that just crashed, and then they shut them down after they said they wouldn't. Do you know who I'm talking about? Am I
Oh,
misremembering?
Arcane Austin.
Okay, yeah. So like they did that, and that wasn't necessarily Phil Spencer's call, but like by all accounts, Arcane Austin could have just kept going on something else. They
Yeah,
could have just
they could have made it Dishonored 3.
like yeah, you could have just shifted them to something else. Like there was no short term looked really good, but long term it didn't necessarily benefit them to shut them down. And I it makes me wonder like did somebody pick who got shut down for him?
I think so. Again, I think this is more
Like,
of Todd. I think this is more of Todd Howard's thing, because they shut down a bunch of ZeniMax. They shut down four ZeniMax things,
oh,
two
we
mobile
talked about
developers.
this. Yeah.
Two mobile developers. One got absorbed. The other got shut down on the mobile side, and then they shut down Arcane Austin and Tango. Tango actually got sold to Crafton. So,
Although
um,
on in hindsight, knowing that they shut down the mobile developers, maybe that means that Todd Howard is also seeing the light. If there's light for him to see.
I don't know, that guy's such a slimy fuck. But but yes, I'm sure Bethesda's definitely had um Bethesda's absolutely had it's sort of like put its hand in the oven regarding mobile, because they've tried to do some big mobile projects, like Fallout Shelter stuff, which people liked, but I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it was keeping Fallout afloat necessarily, um, but yeah, like because they had other things like Elder Scrolls mobile stuff, and it had some sort of like Blade something where it was like a first person sword swinging mobile game. It was expensive, and I don't think it or its sequel ended up making enough money back to justify its existence or whatever.
Probably not, I
Yeah.
imagine.
So yeah, that's why you don't really hear about Bethesda mobile stuff anymore. But yeah, like it was another one I wanted to bring up here. I have it is the Bandai Namco. I actually didn't know that Bandai Namco Online had been around for 15 years. So
Well,
there's a whole
we're old
branch of.
and
I
time
just don't
flies.
remember. But yeah, Bandai Namco had a division called Bandai Namco Online, and it ran for 15 years. Um,
Well, what's something that they made?
Gundam Evolution, which was that Overwatch Gundam game, which didn't last a year. There was a Dragon Ball online game I'd never even heard of called Dragon Ball Z X Keepers. Um, but the big thing was, and we saw this. If you, I understand if you just forgot about this game existing, just because it looks so much like any given Tales game that Namco would be making at any given time. It looks like Grand Blue Fantasy or Tales of. There's a game called Blue Protocol. It was an MMORPG. It was a brand new MMORPG, and it was a big cell shaded MMORPG, and it only came out in Japan, and I don't even know if it made it out of beta, but it only came out in Japan initially. Amazon was footing the bill to publish this thing worldwide. This was going to be a big Amazon Games push, that they were joint developing or joint spending money on it with Bandai Namco, and it
Flopped.
flopped, just absolutely crashed and burned so bad that they canceled the North American release of the game. Amazon just washed their hands of it. And then this year, Bandai Namco announced that, all right, well, starting next fiscal year, we're done. And then like, this news is only like a week old or something, or so they're shutting down Blue Protocol entirely, the MMORPG, and for the Japanese side servers, and they were spending tons of money on this game. This game had a huge amount of money from both Bandai Namco and Amazon being dumped into it, and the beta went horrible. The launch was worse, and then they canceled the worldwide release, and then now the entire division of that company is being shut down.
Amazon, not a great gaming partner, it seems like. Like they're just not a great like
I don't think Amazon knows what it wants. All it knows that it wants a big hit. It wants a big social hit, and it doesn't have any idea how to get there.
well, they were doing their version of Stadia. I can't remember the name of it.
Luna,
Luna, yeah,
it
and I knew a
exists.
couple of yeah, I knew a couple of people who were in the testing phase of it. It's incredible. The technology behind it, like AWS was the one building it. And it's apparently amazing. Amazon's put basically no money into advertising for it because Stadia died just as Luna launched.
Yeah,
And so now there's no fresh but familiar thing to compare it to. There's nothing. So like they
compared to
just
Stadia.
yeah, they just stopped talking about it. And it's just it's around. It won't be for long. But like it's the
Well, here's the
technology
thing.
behind it's
I
supposed to be
think
incredible though.
Namco's had a decent year, but I think Namco's probably shitting their pants right now because, and we haven't talked about this at all, but Sony has put an offer in to buy Katakawa Publishing. Um, and if you know, Katakawa owns
Dragon Ball and
no FromSoft.
oh, they own okay, I thought they were gonna lose all their Dragon Ball guys. No, FromSoft is, that's a big deal.
So, and apparently, like the thing is they actually acknowledged this because it was rumored, and then Katakawa put out a statement. Yes, they have. Yes, we will confirm that they have put forth an offer of intent. We have not made a decision yet, which sounds like, oh, so it's real, it's ongoing, and apparently it's because another company, Cacao or whatever, I don't know who they are, is apparently trying to buy them as well. So they're actually putting themselves out and putting themselves in front of Sony, like, you want to buy us? Because if you don't, someone else is. So Sony is apparently in negotiations as of the recording of this podcast. I think they're saying it's probably going to be decided early December of buying Katakawa, which will give them FromSoft. But also, it will give them a huge chunk of the remaining market of the anime industry. So Sony will have a near monopoly on the anime industry in Japan if they go ahead with this purchase.
That's more what I thought you were getting at because Bandai Namco makes so many
Right. Well,
anime.
Toei is the company that produces Dragon Ball and whatever, and
Right.
they have a death grip on it, of course. So Bandai Namco works very closely with them, but they don't own Toei. They're not, and neither one is owned by the other.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't realize Toei. I actually had no idea who was the publisher behind any of those, but
yeah. So I'm looking it up. Oh, I'm sorry. The Kakao is the Black Desert devs in South Korea. They're actually looking Path of Exile, yeah, Black Desert. They're looking to buy um Katakawa and FromSoft. So
Wow.
they're about to be gobbled up by a big South Korean company. So Sony's basically putting in a counteroffer. So if they do that, FromSoft's gone. So FromSoft is now a first party Sony developer at that
Well,
point.
maybe then you'll finally get a fucking Bloodborne remake. But yeah, that would be well.
So I think this is again, this is probably what's making Namco probably shit itself a little bit, is that Blue Protocol was a massive loss of money, and they're about to lose FromSoft, which is Elden Ring sold 25 million copies, and Shadow of the Ermigerd Tree was sold like, another 12, 15 or more. And all the Dark Souls is going away completely. The whole Dark Souls trilogy gone, right? So Namco's about to lose one of its golden gooses. And then the other golden goose, you also have Tekken, and they also have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Sparking Zero is very successful, made a lot of money, but it's also a split revenue. So was FromSoft technically, but they're about to lose that completely, and that's probably their biggest, you know, highest selling IP stuff. So Namco probably has to have this. Is probably right now having their come to Jesus moment, which is, what do we do? How are we going to compete going forward? Dragon Ball will only carry us so far. People have to one, really like the Dragon Ball game that we have to constantly pump out, but two, that's a gravy train that's going to go away, and we have to share it. So
Well, this is one of those things where, like, we talked about this a little bit when the buying spree was happening, a year or two ago, or like was starting a year or two ago. The pendulum again is swinging the way of, like, so much buying is happening, so little competition's going to exist. Like, Namco is going to be in this position where, like, is Namco going to start selling off pieces of itself?
here's what I think Namco should do, and this is where I think here's the silver lining. Honestly, Namco has to buckle down and start really investing in its own stuff. They have to make their stuff really good again, which I think this is the path to bringing Soul Calibur back. Just sort of on the
Okay.
side. People like Ace Combat, but it's never broken through. Maybe they find some way to break Ace Combat through. The other thing too here, and for me is exciting, is I think this is the incentive, because they're always so budget. They're always so frugal and cheap with their internal stuff. Now is the time to put more budget into something like their next Tales game, because now Tails is going to need to be an even bigger hit than you've ever had before, because Arise did really good numbers for them. But it is also, it's a 60-year-old whore, with what it is. What I mean is, it's a PS2 game in Unreal 4 makeup,
Right.
so it's a 65-year-old lady in a young woman's makeup. Now is the time to turn Tails into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, like I mean, the Tales series has always been sort of a direct competitor to Final Fantasy, though.
Yeah, but they
So
never
it's like,
they never ever got as much budget, so they never ever were
right.
as, as on the same scale. Now's the time now, because you have to have your come to Jesus moment. Your online division's, gone. You're about to lose your golden goose with FromSoft. It's time to really, like, look inward and go, okay, you can only do so much with Pac-Man. I'm sorry, but Tekken's a success already. Soul Calibur could be a success. It has been a success. It could be again, with the right push. Tails is going to be good, and then it's also they're going to have to start. They're going to have to start making new stuff too. And look, man, Klonoa will never sell. Sorry, it just won't.
The thing
Bought
is,
multiple different releases of Klonoa. It's never going to sell. Like, let's just eat that loss here.
if they if this many people are having their come to Jesus moment, or this many companies are, I wonder if we're finally going to start seeing some real attempts at new franchises, new IP.
I
Like,
hope so. Actually, I actually do. I'm actually ready for new stuff, because Elden Ring was, well, it's not really a new IP, but it's a new IP, but not really. Um,
it's new and, well, it's fresh but familiar. Fucking hate that phrase, but it is.
Think about it as like a Whole Goods or some other like hipster market logo. When I hear fresh but familiar.
It's it's the worst. Have
But
you
yeah, like this is just a real. I feel like this is a really good chance. Like Koei Tecmo doubling their numbers to make big console games. That's awesome. We played the Dynasty Warriors Origins demo that just came out. Dynasty Warriors has never been this good. They made Dynasty Warriors like legit good.
Dynasty Warriors? No, it's never
They
been good.
did.
It's not good.
Yeah, you should play that demo though. Wow, they turned it into a character action game.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not like a well, it's not Dynasty Warriors anymore
It's
then.
not, I mean, it's still kind of there, but now it's like you go and you directly meet with generals and engage them and you get into like a fight. You like like they like circle around you and you have a one-on-one fight, with a general. Stuff like
Hmm,
that happens. Like there's boss battles that are very much character like everything's about parrying and perfect dodging and using counter stuff.
that
So
is new. Yeah.
yeah, there's all this finesse now to it, and I was like, "Oh, Dynasty Warriors is freaking awesome now." Or at least
Who did
this demo
who did they
is.
hire?
Apparently, Team Ninja had some hand in after in
Okay.
their post Neo stuff to like, hey, you need to do parries, like counters, stuff like that, like perfect dodges. You need to put some sauce in your game. So
Okay. Maybe I will try it.
the demo's great. It's fantastic.
It's one of those things where it's just like, oh, it's still Dynasty Warriors, and so I'm hesitant, but that's maybe the most fresh take of Dynasty Warriors I've heard in ever. Ever. I mean,
You know what though? If this is a signal of things to come from Koei Tecmo, I'm all for it.
yeah.
Because it actually looks really good now. They're actually like, especially if you got a good PC, like it runs really well on a nice PC. Um, so the graphics look really nice. And again, like just there's actual finesse to the combat, which is incredible. So it's definitely one of those like, oh, okay, I like this. This is a great direction for Koei Tecmo. So I think they're doing it, and Square's doing it, Namco's doing it, Capcom's doing it, Sega's been doing it. And, all these Japanese companies have basically, I think they've, I think they've been properly burned on their mobile side. And then I think more for the Western people, they're getting burned on all their live service stuff. Your Ubisofts, your EAs, um, 2K, I guess. Who's left? That hasn't.
Live service burnout, I think, is going to be a real issue in the industry. I think it already is, but I think it's not going to hit until next year. Like
Mm.
early next year is when you're going to see them make real decisions to move away from live services.
Well,
Because I think they're quite literally always a year behind
yeah, they're
in the
they're
decisions they
so
make.
they're so stupidly reactionary. Rather than like trying to get ahead of things. Because what's going to happen next year, right? Like, let's think about this. Like, Nintendo will launch a new system. It'll launch with a new 3D single player Mario, and it'll do gangbusters. And Ghost of Yotei will do really well. Maybe Fable is apparently looking really, really good. So all of a sudden you're gonna see all like these major single player experiences like really take off, really sell well, like they already have been. And then it's gonna kind of be like, yeah, nobody cares about your next Concord. Like,
Right.
what are you doing?
And I think that's going to cause some pants shit. Now, granted, they might have already started this where you're going to have like the next 2 years, 3 years is going to be huge for single player games
Mhm.
and not a lot for like multiplayer. It's going to be the same old live services that are available for multiplayer. But I think it's next year is going to be where they shit their pants. And then in 3 years or four
Yeah,
years after that is where you're going to have like a year where live services have really dialed back.
yeah. Well, I think
And
the real problem here too is that again, what are the most popular games being played? You brought it up earlier, where it's like people are playing 10 games. Those 10 games
5, 6 years
are
old.
6 years old or older. People aren't moving on from the multiplayer games they're playing because they're still good, they're still valuable, and they're still easy to play on anything on your phone, on whatever system you
And they're
own.
being updated.
And they're being updated and they're still being updated. So the only thing you can do as a company to to generate new revenue besides whatever ecosystem people are fine with being in is single player. You got to give them a new experience. But the thing that the industry is going to have the hardest time coming to Jesus on is that you need to learn to make money off of the sale of the game and leaving it at that.
Well, that and Jesus doesn't talk dirty. So-
Like, I'm serious though. Like, you guys need to find a way for like, okay, we sold 5 million copies of a game. That's great. That's profitable. That needs to be there. So I don't know. I don't
Right.
know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna find that. I don't know if that's gonna be a thing. I mean, if games start costing $100 next year, I can definitely see some problems there too.
And there is serious talk of that. I mean, I don't want to end on a downer. We're at the very, very end of the episode, but for that's not a throwaway joke for anyone listening. It's the $100 game is a debate that has been raging for. I want to say that like we've been hearing in and out of like trade magazines and shit. Basically, the trades. $100 games or $100 is what they want to charge for next gen games.
Hmm.
That's what they wanted to charge for PS5 games generally, right? Wasn't that the original number they talked about? It's
I
worth
don't know.
$100.
I'm sure Ryan would have loved that.
Yeah,
A lot of people are saying Grand Theft Auto 6 might start it, and I'm like, Grand Theft Auto 6 could do it, and they could still be massively successful. But that's because it's Grand Theft Auto 6.
right. And it'll be a game that's around for a decade.
Or your Atelier, Thysa, thighs thighs of the mountains from Koei Tecmo. They ain't gonna sell at $100. Sorry,
Oh, they'll try though.
they'll try.
Well, see, the thing is, Koei Tecmo, as a lot, what they could do is go the other way, where they still sell for 60.
Right, and Sega's kind of been dabbling with that too, where like they sold Sonic for 50, and they've sold other games for like under 60. A couple like for some stuff.
Yeah, where like they could go the other way, where people then look at it more like they're more likely to sell more copies because people are, oh, I'm not going to pay $100 for a game. I'm going to get the $60 game. Could be a thing. But on that note, we have producers to thank. As always, if you want to become a patron, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Danny Himura. Thank you, Danny. And our producers for this episode are Dragon Wolf Makoto, Osnight, Zybernite, Scrunami, Kuroi35, Hyper Viper 89, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes. See you next time.
Later, dudes.